Great. Thank you, everybody, and welcome everybody to the wonderful, beautiful Sunnyvale City Hall. And what a pleasure to have a nice place to roost. Let's begin with the roll call, please.
Thank you. Joining us in person, Director Martinez-Beltran. Here. Walia. Here. Chair Tyson.
Here.
Vice Chair Larry Klein.
Here.
Director Rennie.
Here.
Meadows.
Did you say?
Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Fruin.
Here.
Showalter.
Here.
Thank you. And joining us remotely, we have Director Makachuk.
Present.
Thank you. And I will do a quick search. I do not see any others online, but we do have a quorum of our board.
Great. Thank you. We'll now proceed with the public comment on items not listed on the agenda. Do we have any hands raised or public comment? Not seeing any. Very good. In that case, we now seek public comment for the closed session item. And do we have any public comment online? Not seeing that. Great. Thank you very much. In that case, we will now what's the term? Convene in closed session, and we'll return and report back shortly. Everybody, let's get this meeting going again. So we are reconvening the meeting of the Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and we're returning from closed session, and I can ask staff to provide a report from closed session.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be doing that. The board directed staff to initiate litigation with a unanimous vote from the following members present: Director Scozola, Fruin, Alternate Director Klein, Director Meadows, George Tyson, Rob Rennie, Brian Makachuk, Yvonne Martinez-Beltran, Director Showalter, Director Walia, and Director Klein.
Very good. Thank you. And that was a unanimous vote. I think we want to make sure we comment on. With that, we'll now move on with our regular agenda. And the first one up is our consent calendar. And I'm looking to see, do we have any public comment on our consent calendar?
None online,
I
Chair.
do not see any. And so do we have any items that people wish to pull? I do not see any. And then in that case, I'm looking for a motion for approval. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a Director Makachuk.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Great. Thank you. No further discussion. We'll have a vote.
Thank you. Director Scozola.
Aye.
Martinez-Beltran.
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein.
Aye.
Director Rennie.
Aye.
Director Meadows.
Aye.
Fruin.
Aye.
Showalter. And online, Director Makachuk.
Aye.
Alternate Director Klein.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you. And it's great that we spend little time on it here in this meeting, but we did spend, I'm sure all of us, a great deal of time reading this extensive consent items. And so we're pleased to move on to our next item then, which is a special hearing. Item number 2, a public hearing on compliance with the government code. And I do believe we have a staff report.
Wonderful. Good evening, directors. I'm Gia Ilole, Director of Human Resources. And today, based on some updated requirements, I get the clicking here, of the amended Myers-Milius-Brown Act that took effect at the beginning of this year, SVCE is holding the first public hearing addressing vacancy, recruitment, and retention. And the law is intended to increase transparency around these items by requiring public agencies to share the status of our vacancies, our recruitment and retention efforts, and any intended changes to policies, procedures, and recruitment activities. The law also provides for employee groups or collective bargaining units to be able to present. However, SVCE has none. And as required, the hearing is being held before the approval of this year's fiscal budget. This table outlines the status of the 5 vacancies SVCE currently holds. It equates to a 7.5% vacancy rate. All of these vacancies are directly or indirectly related to new positions that were approved during our mid-year budget process. And these vacancies, you can see, are in varied stages of being filled and have been prioritized for business needs. In 2024, the already comprehensive selection process was updated with some more modern tools to streamline selection for both candidate and hiring teams. And this modernized system also automates job postings to make sure that vacancies are adequately advertised to the right kind of candidates.
If I may interrupt, is it possible to project as a full screen for us? Because we're sharing monitors, and so I think this is a little hard for some to. Do you see what I'm talking about? There's something we do on our screen. I'm sorry. Well, yeah. Oh, there. Okay. Got it. Okay. All right. It's there. Almost there.
No worries.
Right. Great. Please go ahead.
Wonderful. As far as retention goes, there's been no turnover this fiscal year, equating to a 100% retention rate. SVCE supports retention efforts by making sure that our compensation and benefits are competitive and by intentionally creating a culture of connection, development, and balance. And finally, in summary, SVCE's vacancy rates, retention rates, and recruitment timelines are satisfactory. Staff will continue to utilize and optimize the recruitment strategies, including posting on appropriate sites, hiring external recruiters as needed, and closely monitoring compensation and benefits trends to remain competitive. And finally, there are no changes that are foreseen in policies or practice that could lead to future obstacles. Do you all have any questions?
Any questions from directors? I don't see any. Do we have any public comment?
Hands raised online, Chair.
Thank you for providing that report. I think those of us have seen this in other entities that we're with that this be covered.
Looks like Director Makichek has a question.
Oh, please go ahead, Director Makichek.
No, as you said, I've seen this in other jurisdictions, so I'd just like to make a motion to approve.
I believe this is for information only.
Correct.
Yes, it is. So thank you for that offer. But I do believe we've covered the item and appreciate you presenting it to us.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to a regular calendar, and item number 3 is our CEO report.
Good evening, Chair Tyson, directors. Welcome back from recess. Excited to be here tonight. We had a really busy time while you were on break, so there were items to talk about, but I'm going to focus on just a few from my CEO report, including everything to do, and that's to announce promotions and efforts. So I want to start by recognizing a very important promotion that we did just in the last few weeks, and that's of Nick Zanato, who was our former Senior Manager of Technology and Administrative Services. He's now been promoted to Director of Operations, a very, very well-deserved promotion. And he'll be overseeing functions in addition to IT in cybersecurity and contracting and managing a lot of the other kind of day-to-day operations that go on at SVCE. But more importantly, as we occupy our headquarters, he will be responsible for making sure that that thing keeps humming and that we are secure and safe and well equipped in there. So we're excited to have him as a director. He's now joining the senior leadership team as well, reluctantly, but he's there. And then every year we we get to recruit some young college students as interns. And so we have two that actually started with us earlier in the summer. But because we didn't meet in July, they weren't able to introduce themselves. We actually had three in total, and one has already finished her assignment. So starting off, I'm going to introduce Alon Robbins. He is a customer success intern, and I'll just give a little bit about him. He is currently a student at the University of California at Davis, studying wildlife biology and conservation. Oh no, he has a master's in wildlife biology and conservation from UC Davis, and he's studying at UC Santa Barbara in environmental sciences and management. So, Alon, would you like to address the board?
Hello, how's it going? Yeah, my name is Alon. Like Monica said, I am very excited to meet you all. Just a little correction. I am a master's student currently at UCSB studying environmental science and management. Very interested in the clean energy transition. I actually grew up here in Los Altos. So this is a big reason why I'm excited to be an intern for SVCE. Because I would like to advance the clean energy transition in a quick and equitable manner. And a little bit more about myself. I like to rock climb, play pickleball, and do wildlife photography.
Okay. Our next intern is a returning intern. She was with us last summer, Elisa Floyd. She's an intern resources and operation team. And Elisa is studying at UCLA. She's studying government. Oh, she's pursuing a degree in physics at UCLA. Sorry.
Yes. Hi, board. I'm Elisa. Yeah, like Monica said, I just finished my first year of undergrad at UCLA in the engineering program, and I grew up in Sunnyvale, so it's nice to be back home for the summer. This year, I'm currently the clean energy operations intern on the pro team, so learning about power procurement and how it aligns with SVC's mission and doing a lot of process mapping. And last year, I was here on Ripple, and yeah, I come from a background of being involved in a lot of climate action in high school, and SVC was actually my first kind of introduction to the clean energy industry through the high school grant program. So that's what really got me to start learning about it. And as I look forward to my future and think about what career I want to invest myself in, clean energy is really a field that motivates me because of the amount of innovation and fast-paced progress I see in it. And I'm also getting to explore this year how I can use the analytical type thinking that I like using in my studies, as well as my community-oriented thinking outside of the classroom, and how there's a lot of opportunities for that in the energy industry. So really grateful to be back a part of the SVC community again this summer, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting. Nice to see all of you.
Great. Thanks to have both you, Alon and Elisa.
Chair.
Okay.
Oh, yes, please, go ahead.
I just want to add a comment of Alyssa. She is doing great work back in high school, as she's mentioned, and we have recognized her at the county. So really glad to see her now back at SVC. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The only update we could provide was having Director of Government and Legislative Affairs, Cheney, give a brief update on status of certain legislative bills that we've been following over the summer.
Great. Good evening, board. Sorry, more of a walk than I'm used to in the Cupertino chambers. Donna Chang, Director of Government and Legislative Affairs, really happy to be before you tonight. So it's been a busy time in the legislative front since I last talked to you in your May board meeting. On the federal side, as you all know, the president signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act in early July. As anticipated, unfortunately, the final bill is really a complete U-turn on federal policy as it relates to clean energy and climate issues. So, for example, the final bill ends consumer-facing tax credits for EVs, heat pumps, and rooftop solar and storage this year. On the utility scale renewable side, it also accelerates the sunset for tax credits for solar and wind projects. All projects are now also subject to new rules restricting materials and influence from foreign entities of concern, including China. So SVCE is communicating these federal tax credit changes with our customers through direct emails, updated information on our website, and through special webinars. We have 2 upcoming, one on September 4th and one on September 9th. On the state side, the legislature continued with a flurry of activity right before they left for recess in mid-July. One important update is that unfortunately, the language in AB 306, which is a bill that would have paused new local reach codes, was passed and signed into law as part of a larger package in AB 130. There were a couple of notable exemptions in the bill, one for commercial buildings, another one related to general plans, however. So Zoe and her team have been working directly with your staff to talk through the options now that the bill has passed, and Zoe will give a more comprehensive update later in this agenda. There are also several major issues still in front of the legislature at the end of session. They have about a month left to go. And really important issues for SVCE include a potential energy affordability package, SB 540, which is the regional energy bill that we've been talking to you about and that SVCE supports, and then cap and trade reauthorization. So SVCE has been having a lot of conversations during the summer recess about our priorities with our legislative delegation. This week, we actually had an opportunity to attend Senator Becker's press conference that he had on SB 254, the Senate's affordability omnibus package, and a bill that SVC supported. So with that, very happy to answer any questions.
Great. Do we have any questions? I do not see any. Do we have any hands raised? I do not see any. Thank you very much for your report. Director Walia, yes?
Thank you so much, Chair. I just want to call out Nick on his promotion. It's very well deserved, and he's been with the organization for a few years. Just want to congratulate you for that. Thank you.
Okay, I have no further updates from my CEO. Happy to answer any questions should you have any.
I don't see any questions. And do we have any public comment? I think I already asked that. All right.
None online.
I think we're good then. Thank you, Monica. Let's move on then to item number 4, adopt a resolution regarding the execution of a power supply contract. This is the 4th of our prepay agreements. And so coming up to give us the story on that is our CFO.
Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. All right, good evening, directors. As I think Chair Tyson alluded to, this is the 4th prepay, so we have done it 3 times before and hoping to get your approval for this 4th one. And just a reminder that at the last board meeting in June, we actually went through the prepay and the mechanics of this transaction and what, if anything, we're doing different about this prepay because of the situation we're in and the good situation we're in. So we went through the mechanics. So at this presentation, I'm keeping it at the high level. If you remember the discussion, I said that this is the time we would come back and ask for specific parameters and board authorized parameters under which we will execute the prepay. So I'm going to go through those parameters with and starting with a very high level recap of the goals of a prepay. But feel free to ask me any questions that you may have from the previous discussion we had on this. I'd be happy to go over more mechanics on the prepay. Is there an issue there? Oh.
Sorry, we'll have to get used to this. All you get to use this new equipment, but yeah, because that was so weird, you.
That sounds better, I think. Okay, so let's roll with this. So the recap of the prepay, the goal is to reduce the cost of power. This is a competitive advantage we CCAs have that IOUs, our competitor, does not. And this comes from the fact that we get we have the ability to execute tax exempt debt. And this is a structure that has been engineered in a way that we don't actually take on the debt on our balance sheet, but yet we're able to basically take the benefit of being tax exempt through this prepay mechanism that has been around since the 90s, started with the use of natural gas. And we started with clean energy, with one of the first transactions being SVCE in partner with AVA. So again, we're capturing the spread between taxable and tax-exempt debt. And none of these bonds are financial obligations of SVCE. And the way this works is we take the savings from the spread and translate it basically into power procurement, lowering our power purchases. The last basically lowered our PPA cost by $11 and about 32 cents a megawatt hour. So that's pretty substantial, contributing about $8 million to savings. Of all the three prepays, just a reminder, we're at 14.3 million. We're hoping this one will take it close, hopefully over 20 million. But we'll see. Obviously, the actual economics will depend on the market and the timing at the time we execute the deal. Another key point on the board is there's minimal risk to us. Should anything happen, we go back to the existing structure. One exception was the last meeting basically authorized basically the transaction cost in the hiring of a municipal advisor and the attorneys to negotiate and get to this point of the prepay and also continue to close on prepay after the board approval. All of those fees are contingent on the execution of a prepay. Should the prepay not materialize, we're not obligated to pay them, with the exception of the credit rating fee, as has always been the case. Once we initiate the pricing of a prepay, we will have to pay those fees, and that's about $321,500. Same request we made at the June meeting. If you look at the approval, this item back up, because just to clarify, when we asked for that authority from the board, we were very specific. We said Moody's. But now we've learned that there are other credit rating agencies that can also rate these bonds. So we're changing the word from Moody's to credit rating agencies at the same cost. And also a reminder that should the unexpected occur, that we initiate the prepay and not able to execute it, the underwriter for these bonds, Morgan Stanley, has agreed to split that cost with us. All right. So here are the execution parameters that we're asking the board to authorize, under which we will execute the transaction. That's the aggregate principal amount of the bonds will not exceed $1.25 billion. And again, the bonds issued are not guaranteed obligations of SVCE. And we're saying that to get at least an 8% savings in the initial term of the bonds. Again, these are 30-year bonds, but because of the market dynamics, it's to have a reset period. Basically, we price these bonds every 5 to 10 years, as we have done with the prior 3 prepays. So that's the execution parameter. Should we be in a situation that we cannot meet the 8%, we will then decide whether we continue or we may come back to the board and adjust as necessary. One thing I forgot to mention, on the phone with us is our municipal advisor from PFM Financial Advisors, Jim Carbone. So should you have any questions about prepay, he's also available to answer those questions as well. So the next steps after we get here tomorrow, we will have CCCFO board. Remember, this is the conduit through which we issued the bonds are issued. That SVCE was one of the founding members. And Monica sits on that board on behalf of SVCE. There's Jim. You can see him now. Hi, Jim. So we take it to the CCCFA board for approval tomorrow, and after the CCFA board, we'll basically have all the necessary approvals to actually enter the market. But the timing at which we'll enter the market will depend on the market conditions. The conditions have been going up and down. This has been a very volatile year. Started really well, and came down. Right now, it's still not that good as when we initiated it. So it will take us. I'm expecting hopefully around September time we'll be able to execute, but we will, again, if we're not able to meet those execution, we'll come back to the board as to the next steps. So those were the items that I plan to cover, but as I mentioned, I'm happy to take any questions either at this part of the presentation or what we had covered back in June. And the recommendation that we're seeking from the board explicitly authorizing the resolution with those terms and conditions are listed in this next slide.
Okay, thank you, Amrit. And this being the fourth time we're going through this, I think we're getting a little bit more of a feel for it. And then the fact that we've seen it before. In fact, I'll go ahead and start with a question because I heard Bennett Chang talk about this large bill that just got passed. And if the driver of value here is the difference between tax exempt and taxable bonds, wouldn't a reduction in tax rates as per that bill in effect shrink that value advantage?
It would, yeah, naturally, yeah.
But we've already seen that now.
Yeah, and one thing we benefit from is being in California, which is also a high state income tax. So that all it does help us as opposed to national or federal, just the federal, but that does affect the economics. Yeah, you're right.
Okay, thank you. Do we have other questions from the board? I do not see any. I don't see any online. Do we have any public comment? I do not see any in the room.
No hands raised, Chair.
In that case, having listened to comments or questions, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
One thing I'll add, Director Riley is getting ready.
Thank you. I am happy to support staff recommendation.
Whoa. I just wanted to add, I forgot to mention the Finance and Admin Committee met last week on August 4th and also went through this in detail and unanimously voted to recommend that the board approve the transaction. Sorry, I failed to mention that.
Great, thank you. All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second, so let's go ahead with the vote.
Thank you. And if I could confirm that motion, it is to adopt resolution 2025-16, authorizing the CEO to execute the power supply contract with the California Community Choice Financing Authority and execute or approve the related supporting agreements and authorize the CEO to enter into agreements with credit rating agencies.
Great.
Thank you. Right, I will start with Director Lee. Scozen.
Aye.
Martinez Beltran.
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein.
Aye.
Director Lenny.
Aye.
Manis.
Aye.
Freeman.
Aye.
Showalter.
Aye.
Director Makachuk.
Aye, and I'll make a comment afterwards.
Thank you. Alternate Director Klein.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries with Director Barbadillo absent.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Let's hear that comment, Director Makachuk.
I'm really smiling because I remember in the first prepay agreement that we did, how involved it was, and I recall spending quite a few hours on this, and it was very innovative at the time. And we knew that once we went through the first one, they would all get easier, and it's just really rewarding to see SVCE being able to work with the other professionals involved and reduce the transaction costs and the speed and understanding of what we're able to accomplish. So I think, Amrit, you remember back the first one, so it's very rewarding to see this as the fourth one. And hopefully we'll be able to get to market, the pricing will be good, and we'll be able to deliver benefits yet again. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, let's move on to item number 5. where we were talking about a 10-year power purchase agreement. And our speaker is coming down. And we're welcoming Britta Bradshaw, who is our Power Resources Manager. Turn your mic is.
Okay, that sounds like it's working. All right. Good evening, board. I'm happy to be here tonight to present on item 5, authorize the CEO to execute a power purchase agreement with IP Darden LLC. So we are asking that you authorize the CEO to execute this agreement for IP Darden LLC for the procurement of co-located solar energy and battery energy storage. This would be up to 93.01 megawatts, or approximately 250,000 to 270,000 megawatt hours per year of solar energy, and 91.48 megawatts, or about 366 megawatt hours of 4-hour battery energy storage. This would be a 10-year PPA with expected commercial operation in June 2028, and the total amount not to exceed $330 million. A look at our past executed long-term PPAs. So we now have 24 long-term PPAs for clean energy, and 9 of those are now online. A total of 625 megawatts of clean capacity online, and a total of almost 1,600 megawatts to date of capacity executed. We are expecting a 78% RPS in 2030. Some context about this procurement effort. This is rising out of an RFO that we held last summer for long-term, meaning at least 10-year PPAs for resources that could offer any number of benefits, including renewable portfolio standard or RPS energy, compliance with our integrated resource plan, greenhouse gas reduction targets. A big one is our midterm reliability procurement order, which is a state order for new build clean capacity, and we do still have a procurement need there. Portfolio diversity, we were looking for different technologies and geographies around California, ideally. Resource adequacy, and just looking for carbon-free energy and standalone storage projects. So we launched this RFO last summer. We're coming to you about a year later because that RFO really had 2 tracks where we first prioritized the CAISO Cluster 15 resources, which are basically the latest batch of resources that the CAISO will be looking at interconnecting to the grid. We had a state mandated timeline sort of to shortlist those, and then we turned to the rest of these projects that actually have nearer term online dates generally, and we shortlisted Darden from that process. I'll note that this RFO was launched before we adopted our new PPA project selection criteria in the spring. But this contract, we did consider it against that standard, and it does have a lot of benefits. It requires a project labor agreement. It's contributing, I think, about 2,000 local construction jobs, contributing about $2 million to the local economy there, so in community investments. So the project does look good against that standard as well. But notably, we really chose this project because it is helping with compliance mandates such as our midterm reliability procurement mandate. A little bit of background on this project. So the project name is the Darden 3 project. It's in Fresno County, California. And the parent company is Intersect Power, which is an experienced developer. The project size, the solar is between 91.48 megawatts to 93.01 megawatts of solar, and this will be confirmed likely by the end of this month. And the storage is 91.48 megawatts of a 4-hour battery. The products that we're getting from this, again, are just the midterm reliability counting rights and resource adequacy, as well as about 250 to 270 gigawatt hours per year of renewable energy that counts towards our RPS. Again, it's a 10-year contract expected to start in June 2028 with a fixed price for the capacity in dollars per kilowatt month, as well as a fixed price in dollars per megawatt hour for the solar. This contributes about 6% towards our retail sales, which means it also contributes about an additional 6% towards our RPS procurement efforts. And it meets a lot of our clean goals, our RPS requirements, and notably it provides, despite being a 91.48 megawatt project, it provides about 70 megawatts towards our midterm reliability requirement, and that's just because of funny accounting rules for midterm reliability. So it's actually a pretty significant contribution there. It also supports future prepays, which you just heard about, which need us to have clean generation. And so this provides that. Just a look at our annual RPS project progress. So this contract will help. You can see here the dark green stacked bars are our RPS progress. The light green show our clean energy, and Darden is stacked on top there as sort of the pink color. And so you can see that starting around 2028, we do start to have some of our existing contracts rolling off, and we start to have additional need for clean energy to meet our state and agency clean energy targets. So this is really helping ladder in. We're going to keep procuring more resources to add in there and fill that up over time. This fits in really nicely. This also helps with our compliance towards long-term RPS procurement mandate. So not only do we need a certain amount of RPS energy, but of that target, 65% of it has to come from long-term contracts defined as at least 10 years. So we are already in a good position on our long-term RPS requirements, but this is helping contribute more to our long-term RPS mandate under SB 350. Looking at our energy and reliability portfolio, we are continuing to get more clean over time. And so Darden, the solar component is increasing our clean energy by solar by about 6%. And it's also contributing about, the battery component is contributing about 4% towards our peak RA capacity. And again, about 70 megawatts towards our midterm reliability requirement. A quick discussion of project risk. So all power supply agreements come with some level of risk. There's really two different categories. There's development risk before the project is online, which is the risk of will the project even come online, and then performance risk once the project is online. As far as development risk, this project is looking quite good in that it has the counterparty has site control already. And it's also already completed its permitting processes, which takes it kind of ahead of the bunch. It's part of the CAISO interconnection cluster 14, so its interconnection work is already underway. There is supply chain and labor cost risk to any project. There's also financing risk, and a new one that we're especially seeing is tariff risk. So this project does include a provision that allows for the storage rate to be adjusted, mirroring changes to the tariff from what we're expecting today to accommodate that uncertainty for developer costs. This is something that unfortunately we're hearing is happening in other agreements, and we think this project is actually in a good place in that it does have a lot of domestically manufactured components. Once the project is online, there's the performance risk of will the solar generate as much as we're expecting? Will the battery count for the level of resource adequacy that we are expecting? And will the battery operate optimally? But we're optimistic about this. It's an experienced counterparty. In summary, Darden 3 project diversifies our portfolio while meeting our clean objectives. It contributes an additional 6% of RPS eligible energy each year. It helps meet our clean energy goals of SB 100, SB 350, and SB 1020. It reduces our greenhouse gas emissions. It can provide resource adequacy, capacity. Specifically, the solar paired with storage is a really good fit for our new slice of day resource adequacy requirements. It provides midterm reliability attributes for 2028. The co-located solar and storage balance our hourly clean energy and capacity positions. And it is net positive portfolio value and supports future prepay volumes. And just summarizing that request, that you authorize the CEO to execute an agreement with IP Darden for the procurement of co-located solar energy and battery energy storage.
Great, thank you. This project clearly does a lot of good things for us. So let's see, do we have any directors with questions? Yes, Director Martinez Beltran.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Oh, okay. Let's hold off on that just a second, and then I don't see any other directors, so I will ask if there's public comment, and I will note that we did receive a letter from the CCA Workforce and Environmental Justice Alliance right before this meeting, and we want to acknowledge their interest in our contracting processes. Do we have any other public comment? And then I'm going to bring it back then to the directors, and we have Director Walia. There.
Thank you. So, sorry, I'm still trying to figure out how to get the microphone to work. Just one quick comment. So I was looking at the table with the different PPAs we have. It seems for some reason this is about the maximum size we are going megawatts, like 90 something, close to 100, except one. And this is great. I like it. It's a win-win. I mean, it's just wonderful. Just curious why that number somehow pops up repeatedly.
Yeah, great question. It's not a rule that we have. It's just generally we want to diversify our portfolio of contracts and sort of diversify the risk. There is always that risk that a contract may not come online, or once it's online, it may not be performing as expected. And so if we have all of our clean capacity expected from a single contract, that sort of puts a lot of risk there. So I think the size is kind of nice to layer in, but not a hard rule on size there.
That was what I thought, but I wanted to hear that from you. Thank you so much. I'm definitely going to be supporting it. I think somebody else wants to make a motion. Thank you.
Great. We have a pending motion, and before that, let's hear from Director Megachuk.
Thank you for the overview. Are we making any deposits as part of this agreement? Because
Great question.
Go
sorry,
ahead.
We are not making deposits. They will provide to us a project development security. So they'll provide collateral to us that protects us if the project were to not come online.
Wonderful. I'll be supporting this motion.
Great. Let's turn to Director Meadows.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to make a comment about this item and the last item. This item is a 9-figure ask. The previous one was a 10-figure ask. City of Los Altos never sees numbers like that. But there's not a lot of discussion because this has been well cleared out, and some of the committees have, I didn't mean well cleared out, well explained, clearly laid out. That's where I was going with that comment. And so I too want to support it, but I want to make sure that the public understands that we understand that these are really large amount of monies, and that this business dictates that because it covers large swaths of the county, and this is what being in the power energy space takes. So I had to pick my jaw up, but but well done. Thank you. I too support the ask.
Very good points. Thank you. Did you have something? Director Showalter.
I have a question too that is more curiosity than I'm also very happy to support this. But I was wondering, what is the size of this? How many acres does this cover? And also, do you know what the land use was before? Are we taking,
I don't know how many acres, we can certainly respond to that later, but it is a very large project. It's probably the largest one in California at this point, right?
We're just one off-taker of the project. It's a large project.
and also, sometime it would be interesting to learn about if anything is done with the land under these, if it can be used for sheep grazing, or, if there's any other agricultural value for
Mhm.
these projects. I've been reading some things in some magazines about it, and it's just kind of interesting that some projects are combining things. So, but anyway, thank you so much. It's a great project. We're happy to support it.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll note that I think, if I recall correctly, it's considered low quality agricultural land that not much else could have been done with the land, is my understanding.
I think that's it for something. Director Martinez Beltran, you're up.
Thank you. For that and all of the reasons, I think this project is definitely essential for us. I know it's a little bit scary in this time, being what we've been going through, but I am really happy to support this, and I'd like to move that we authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute an agreement with IP Darden LLC for the procurement of co-located solar energy and battery energy storage systems, BESS, in substantial form and any non-substantive sequential amendments and ancillary agreements as follows, and I'll let you take that from there.
Second.
A through C.
We have a motion and a second. Let's go with the vote.
Director Lee.
Aye.
Scozola.
Aye.
Martinez Beltran.
Aye.
Walia.
Aye.
Chair Tyson.
Yes.
Vice Chair Klein.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Meadows.
Aye.
Fruin.
Aye.
Showalter.
Aye.
Makachuk.
Aye.
Alternate Director Klein.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously with Director Barbadillo absent.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item number 6, where we're providing feedback on the fiscal year 25-26 proposed operating budget. And coming up again is our CFO, Amrit Singh, to give us a presentation.
If I could speak before Amrit, is that okay?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I'm a few hours ahead of you, and I would like to leave the meeting, and I regret doing so, but I'm 4 hours ahead of you.
I think that's quite all right. And I believe we still have quorum. And so thank you for your participation in all of our key voting items. And I think you're coming back to our time zone tomorrow, so you can adjust quickly then.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, let's go ahead, Amrit.
Hopefully.
There we go.
Is better this time. Okay, so as the purpose here is stated on the slide, this is in preparation for the board to adopt the budget in September. If you know, our regular process is to bring a draft or a proposed budget in the August meeting, so that when we go to the September meeting, we can incorporate any comments and feedback the board has. So that's what we're looking for at this time, is comments and feedback that you have, so we can incorporate them. And just a reminder, our fiscal year ends September 30th, so the new fiscal year starts October 1st. And when you approve the budget in September, we'd like to have the budget in place before the new fiscal year starts. So this is important in the sense that we can get the comments now, so we can incorporate them. What you'll find as I go through the presentation is a lot of this will be continuation of the discussion we had in June when we explicitly went through the stress test analysis and broadly discussed all the stress and the uncertainties present in our business that affects us. And those uncertainties you should keep in mind as you look at the results of this, as you look at the numbers of this proposed budget. So I'll go through the key budget timeline very quickly, present the proposed budget, the revenue forecast, which is always the biggest uncertainty and no different in this case. We'll go through the reserves projections. Again, you'll find it's very similar to what we discussed in June, and management strategy. And as we always do at the time of adoption of the budget, we always review for the adequacy of our reserves and reserve targets and any adjustments that need to be made to the policy. So we'll go through that. And then we'll also discuss not just our revenues and power supply expenses, but all the other operating expenses for the organization. So very quickly on the budget timeline, as I mentioned, we started in June, the Finance Committee meeting, went through the stress test analysis as well as the budget framework. So we could get Finance Committee's feedback before presenting this proposed budget. In June, we went through the stress test analysis. Again, in September, we bring back the budget, incorporating feedback we get today. But as we always do, as you know, big uncertainties that affects our finances and our revenue projection is where PCIO, PG&E's rates will be. And while the final rates pretty much till that's the end of December, but there are some key numbers that come out in mid-October. The market price benchmark, the CPUC issues that determines PCIO and to some extent the forecast of PG&E rates. By that time, we have more certainty. So as we've been doing in the recent past, we will bring back the budget where we get to adjust the revenues and power supply expenses. We won't necessarily adjust the other operating expenses, which we will do at the mid-year budget as we do in March. So this is pretty much our regular calendar and timeline. Most of you are, but just highlighting it. So the key highlights of the budget, very consistent message from the June. That's the good news, is that the message is consistent. The bad news is also that, unfortunately, it's the same message, which is that we're looking at pretty much a emergence over the next 5-year outlook. The stress test, the type of analysis we were doing, this is sort of that type of an environment that by forward numbers that we see in the market is indicating that we're entering into. So in terms of this fiscal year 26, this forecast right now, this budget shows a withdrawal of reserves of 40.1 million to balance the budget. The biggest driver, as I mentioned, is a decline in our revenues. This is because of the higher PCIO and lower PG&E generation rates. And for SVCE, this budget is proposing to PG&E by continuing to provide at least a 1% discount on average for our customers and continuing the income care for our customers, which would be the 1% dollar equivalent that we could have given to all customers, but translated into dollar bill credit for low-income customers, which we're projecting at this time to be about $12. But again, these numbers will be finalized in the December meeting. Well, as we mentioned in June, there are changes at this time. I know this is a big number. It's not easy to take. We've been mentioning this for a while. Recently as March, we talked about the 5-year projection, and obviously when we had our discussion in June on stress and major risks of facing the business. So consistent with the message, this is what we build the reserves for these downturns in market, and we are in good position with our financial reserves. We are already above our target as of now of 350 days of cash on hand. We are doing target threshold of 120, and we'll go through those numbers. Because of that, staff is not recommending any that we take any drastic changes. We don't want to lose the momentum that we have achieved as an organization towards our mission. We don't need to take any drastic. It gives the results gives us basically time to take measured and strategic response to changing financial conditions, and that's what they were designed for. The customer discount that's baked into this proposed budget, as is always the case, we time our changes in January. The PG rates change. We don't try to introduce too many rate changes to our customers. So we continue with the 4% that we had authorized effective January 2025. We propose that continues to the end of 2025, which means 3 months of the new fiscal year, October, November, and December. We'll continue with the 4%. And then starting January, at this point, we have incorporated 1%. But again, these will all be subject to board's final approval in December when we bring the proposed rate changes. Okay. The other changes in the forecast, the operating expenses are relatively in comparison to all the other changes here. Personnel, we are not asking for any additional personnel. There is some adjustment for cost of living that's baked into the budget. Slight increases in power expenses, very small all other expenses are slightly less than $4 million, and that's basically to account for some of the vendor contract agreements that most of them the board has explicitly approved, and also some anticipated legal expenses and other minor changes. So here's a highlight. The and the staff report attachment has more detailed breakdown of the budget, but as you can see, these numbers appear very small on my screen. Hope it's better on yours. The biggest change is the revenues, that circle, that's about $165 million reduction compared to the current fiscal year budget. And I'm going to go through the details in the next slide. So that's the big highlight of this slide and of this budget. The other thing I would note is, relative to the current budget, you can see there's some big differences if you look at the transfers in other expense categories. And this one is the $35 million time bill credit that we're issuing for the current year that the board approved in March to offset customers' usage month of August. So that is scheduled. It's going to go out starting in September, reflecting primarily the high usage month of August. And that's when the bills are always a little bit delayed. So that's a big difference. You can see, obviously, it is up to that we give not just this one-time bill credit, but the ongoing CARE bill credit for low income. We were showing that as a transfer out of the operating budget, but going forward for this current fiscal year, the number is about 4. For the next book was fiscal year 25-26, it's about 4.1 million. And so showing that as a transfer from operating budget, we are including it in the energy revenue line. The reason is actually it is a revenue component. It's better aligns with the accounting practice, which is always recognized. And right now we do some funny internal accounting, which we don't need to do. And this will also simplify. If you remember the discussion during the one-time bill credit, we had the discussion. We were saying residential customers' bill would be like $48, and the board said, "Why don't you round it to $50?" And we said, and we had included a contingency of $2 million. That was one of the reasons for that, so we can round to a number that is more. That we can market easily and it's more noticeable for customers. This approach, which is actually correct approach from an accounting perspective and also from the way we track cost of service, it'll be in the revenue line. So when we come to the board, right now, for example, the projection for 1% CARE bill credit would be $12 a month. But when we bring the final number in December, the board can say, round it to $15. We will use that explicit amount that the board designates. It simplifies that. It simplifies record keeping, and it's aligned with our accounting and the way we track costs. So that's one change we're doing going forward. So here's the big story. This is a typical graph we show that shows why we have the $165 million revenue reduction. Again, as you can see, PCL is down. PG&E's rates are projected to come down. Even PG&E cannot accurately forecast this rate right now. They do issue a forecast in May, and if you look at what's approved in rates that go into effect in January, they're drastically different. So this is the current projections. Again, we'll have projections when we come to the vote in December. But this is the main driver behind the numbers that you're seeing. PG&E rates going down, PCRA going up, shrinking the blue box times the megawatt hours we sell is our revenues. And of course, the customer billing rate is the blue box plus the PCIA. And the good news from a customer perspective is their generation rate. Remember, this is only generation rate. They have the big chunk that's T&D on the PG&E side, which is actually a bigger component of the bill now. So on generation, at least, they will see a very good discount. Here we're showing 30%, but we're showing 4% ineffective. If you look at the bill credit that we're giving, that 35 million or up to 35 million, it's 10% discount we're giving. Here we're showing the conventional 4%, the standard discount. But so with 4%, this shows 30%. If I were to account for the actual effective discount that they're getting of 10%, it's more like a 24% reduction. So here's the result projections, the 5-year forecast. This is very similar to the base case we presented in June. There we were in the fifth year, $153 a days of cash on hand, $41. Again, the distinction between that darker blue and basically is the funds we have set aside for programs and building, and a large amount of that is the funds that we have earmarked that for ongoing programs, but they're not they haven't been taken up by the customer yet, so they still are not recognized as a cost from an accounting perspective, and it also still provides that financial liquidity that we have. And over the 5-year period, I should say the funds for programs is about $93 million. And most of them has been committed to programs, which is a small amount that's uncommitted. And of course, every time, Justin brings the programs forward, and then the board explicitly directs expenditures of those funds. So again, the good news here was the downturn we're seeing. If you look at this fiscal year, but the end of next fiscal year, going through end of September 2027, you can see we would still be at or close to our target days of cash of 350 days on hand. So reserve management will be similar to what we discussed in June, even though the 5 years shows a negative outlook. Remember all the uncertainties that are present in creating this forecast. So you should have that perspective as you read this forecast. Shows on average we're drawing about 75 million a year. Obviously, we are not going to do that. We will make some adjustments, but as I said, we'll need to make those adjustments now. This assumes that we continue to provide at least 1% discount overall relative to PG&E rates. Programs continue to get funded at 2% of revenues, and we spend those earmarked funds that we have for programs of 93 million as planned. So the recommendation at this point is no major changes. We'll back the budget in this adjusted budget in December when we'll have better forecast. That's when the board will make the decision as to what rates will go into effect in January. In the meantime, as we committed to at the last meeting, we've already initiated looking at financial levers. This is what the reserves affords us the opportunity to do, to be strategic. We want to look at the levers. Should there be need, we know what levers we can press. Should the financial pictures change in the way we're forecasting on a sustained basis. The reserve target policy, as I said, we do this time. A lot of this is usually based on the stress test analysis. We design our reserves to at least withstand the model stress test, but that's not the only factor. We also take into account how we model the stress test and other inputs that we get from like the credit rating agencies, which continue to support a target days of cash on hand of 350 days. If I were to strictly follow the model stress test, it will say is the upper reserve target, but which we do not recommend at this time because again, the projection is based on a stressful condition and there's no practical implications from doing so because if this is the forecast that prevails, it also shows that we're not in position of contributing to reserves. So there's no practical reason. For that reason, staff recommends that we stay with the current reserve targets and we make no changes to the reserves policy at this time. Very quickly on the operating expenses, as I said, this is not the main story of the budget. There's some movements of costs up and down, so some of these increases appear small, but overall, total operating expenses are not changing that much. We're continuing to fund programs at 2%. It's a lower number because our revenues are forecasted to be lower. Office, we set aside in fiscal year 23-24, we had already transferred funds for the office building of 20 million. So ongoing reservations and getting the office ready for staff to move in with offices, furniture, and all officers, office space and the interior remodeling. And some of you may have heard we may have to do some exterior remodeling due to unplanned circumstances. Maybe you didn't hear. Sorry. Talk about it, I guess. So the capital expenditures were budgeted there. That's what we'll continue to draw from. And should there be any change to that, just wasn't necessarily the mid-year. But ongoing office expenses to maintain the landscaping, including some furniture that we need to expense. We are including that small component in this budget, but the major capital expenditures were already allocated in a previous budget. That's in any building fund. So as you know, that's the conclusion of my presentation for the budget. So I am plan to keep that on unless I get another direction. So in summary, there are a lot of risks. A lot of this risk we went through in detail at the June meeting. Those are all present in this forecast. We will make adjustments to reduce at least some of the uncertainty as we get better information towards the end of the year, and we'll bring back the adjusted budget, which is when the board will actually decide what rate's going to affect, what discount, what, if any, changes we make to our pricing strategy or rate strategy will be done at the December meeting. In the meantime, we're going to continue to look at our financial levels, which we hope to be in position to bring to the board in December. And as I said, at this time, staff does not recommend any changes to the reserve targets or the reserve policy. And that concludes presentation. So I seek your feedback so we can incorporate any changes necessary. And hopefully when we meet in September, it'll be a shorter presentation and we're ready to approve. And if I haven't mentioned it, Finance Committee met on August 4th and unanimously recommended that the board adopt this proposed budget. And we went through detailed discussions at the Finance Committee meeting.
Great, thank you for that presentation. And so let's go ahead and solicit I'm going to say either questions or comments, and we'll start with Dr. Showalter.
Yes, thank you very much for the presentation and also for the presentation at the Finance Committee. And one of the things I wanted to sort of re-ask that we talked about a lot at the Finance Committee is how we're going to inform our customers that they're getting a $40+ rebate. You know, we didn't want to divide it up and we don't want it to get hidden on the bill. So there was going to be some outreach, and I wondered you want to share a little bit about what that outreach will be.
Yeah, again, that is not for the proposed budget. That is for the last year budget or current budget that was approved in media budget in March. Everything is planned. Justin can provide more details, but I know there was a discussion about postcards. I know we are sending a bigger, kind of like a postcard, but it's a bigger, like a page size, but it is a card, right, Justin? Oh, Pam can address.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes. Hi. Good evening. Okay, so yes, talking all things communications, which my team manages. So we have developed a postcard for residential and a commercial version. So really appreciate your feedback at the FNA committee meeting about that. So it's still the letter coming from our recommendations from our CEO, since it's to all customers in our whole service area. So we will do that, issue a press release. Most of our communications, just for the services that we have to provide and for the being a public agency and providing public information, cover all the bases. So all social media, informing our member communities, equipping you and your PIOs with ways to help amplify the news. We sort of have this checklist of things that we do. Our newsletter, it's really good news that we plan to share in multiple places, but a direct mailer and an email as well to the emails that we have on file to customers. We want them to see the news. So that will be coming ahead of the bill credits being issued in September, so in the coming weeks.
But we really liked the idea that there would be a separate piece of mail that each customer would receive, highlighting that they were getting this service from Silicon Valley Clean Energy, because I think sometimes, what's in our bill is a little hidden. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. We'll bring it to each customer's attention.
Thanks.
Great. We'll go with Vice Chair Klein and then Director Walia.
Thank you, Chair. Several questions. First, we're definitely blessed to be where we are with our reserves. And just as a general question, how does that compare to other CCAs? And where our reserves stand?
I think we were, in terms of days of cash on hand, remember, the actual size depends on the size of the CCA. I believe we are far exceeding anyone else that I know of, at least. Monica, you may have more information.
Yeah, this is information that we kind of share behind the scenes with each other. I think we're not number one, but we're close to number two. Or we are number two, but that's okay. That's okay.
That's all great news. And that's what you're hoping from being fiscally sound from a business. At the end of the day, we are a business, which I think is really important. So your proposal of no drastic changes, and we'll revisit in December, makes total sense to me. You mentioned a little bit about CareFera and how that's being billed now. Can you clarify that again? I was a little confused, and I didn't really see it.
No worries.
Called out.
Yeah, it's not how they're still going to receive a monthly credit. So remember, they get the 4% discount everyone gets. And remember, they also get a substantial discount on the T&D, which brings their discount. I mean, all in all, more than probably 50% from an average rest customer. I actually have an appendix in the presentation. But what we're changing is on the budget, where we're showing the line item on the budget. So before, like for this current fiscal year, we were showing 5.4 million as a transfer from the operating budget, to a fund we set aside. And then each month we have to make sure by the end of the year we don't exceed that. And then we make all these changes. But in practice, the bill credit we give to the low-income customers is actually a rate reduction. And from an GAAP accounting perspective, it's still, if you look at it in our financial statement, it's not an expense, it's not a cost, it's a revenue. It's a revenue. We're saying let's align with the accounting. It makes the budgeting easier, it makes reconciliation easier. It's also actually reflective of the cost of serving the customer, because it is a rate reduction. It's a revenue. It's not an expense like any other expense that we have. I think the reason this started is because back in the day, before me, when we did the COVID relief, customer relief, CRCR fund, um, that's when the practice started as a transferring, and we kind of continued with that. But now we say it really doesn't make sense. Let's align with the accounting. Let's align with how we track cost for customers, and also makes the rate direction we get from the board easier. So we don't have to do this contingency and do funny numbers like 12.05. The board can just say round it to $15, and we would go with that.
Okay, I appreciate that because I didn't see that in the documentation. So thank you for that. And looking forward to December, my bigger question, of course, in December, which we always have an issue of what the PG&E rates are going to be for the upcoming year, which isn't finalized. And, there's always those questions. I don't know, and we hear lots of things from PG&E of how the rates are going to go down next year and all this. And I don't know how, and this is more of an issue for December, not for now, as we're setting out the budget for the next fiscal year, but how we revisit that in December with more focus, when we always have what rates, and conceivably the CPUC, if they're asking for lower rates, which PG&E keeps saying that they're going to be doing, that would be an easy rubber stamp from the CPUC as opposed to the ever increasing rates. Do we have any idea, I know it's 6 months or 5 months away, where things will be, and what's your take on that from a rate standpoint?
Yeah, very good question. That is the biggest risk for us. And again, there's a lot of materials on that from the June presentation that are very relevant to this discussion. The biggest driver is market prices, actually. Remember, we're talking about the commodity piece of the PG&E's overall bill is impacted by a lot of things. The T&D, there's a lot of issues going on, and a lot of effort on the legislature that may affect that as well. The commodity for PG&E, for the most part, is a pass-through. I mean, they're authorized to earn an authorized rate of return for capital in generating assets that they have. But for the most part, it is a pass-through cost, which means it's really dependent on market prices. Prices are coming down, and we have talked about that always, right? Prices come down, our revenues come down. And the reason is what's happening right now is when 2025 rates was set in effect for PG&E, they were based on a forecast of energy prices, RA and RBS. Those prices have come down significantly. So that means PG&E, in charging their customer right now for 2025, is over collecting, charging customers more than it's costing them to serve. There's a true-up, there's a balancing account, which at the next year, the CPUC is called the error balancing account. The CPUC will approve that and say, return that money back to the customers. That lowers next year's rate. Then there's the PCIA that we get, our customers get charged, which is effectively affecting us, right? Because there's no difference between our rates to our customers. It's a total of what PCIA plus what we charge. PCIA, it also works against us in the sense that when prices come down, PG&E says, well, these resources that are procured on behalf of your customers when they're our customers are now less valuable. And when the forecast PCIA rate was set, it was assuming higher prices. Now it's lower prices. So we undercollected from your customers' CCA. So now we're going to make that up. So that's one big component. That's why I said when you see good financials for 1 year, don't bank it. These balancing accounts will take that away the following year. And if you remember that from the slide in June, don't bank 1 year's rates. 2 years that's why 2 years is very important for us in addition to 5 year. So that's a big part of it. And then they have to base the rates on where the cost will be for 2026, which is based on a forecast. Those forecasts, Now, because market prices have come down, that forecast price will come down, which will also lower the 2025 PG&E generation rates and increase our PCIA. So it's a double whammy for us. That's what's happening. Prices will move up and down between now and mid-October when CPUC comes up with this. So no one knows the prices. That's why I said even PG&E, when they set their ERA forecast in forecasting 2026 rates in May, is drastically different than what gets approved. And they have full information. We have to guess this information. Some components of this is not right for us to guess. Some of this is also the way the PCIA is structured increases our risk in this area. That's why our stress test analysis shows a big impact when prices come down. Some of these obviously.
I appreciate that. It's the crystal ball that we're all trying to live with, but there's a lot of things that are completely out of our control, and how the market changes, as well as conceivably legislation and other things. We hear lots of things about the pluses and minuses of data centers, what that might or may or may not do to rates. There's lots of misinformation or just unknowns out there right now. So
yeah.
I appreciate the explanation, and this is what this board is always trying to do, is making sure that from an organizational standpoint, we're doing the best for our ratepayers as well as the business itself. So thank you.
Absolutely. As I said, very good question. And remember, that's why we needed the reserves we needed, because of these risks that we face. I know there's always question why this entity holds this reserves, because these are the type of risks we face, right?
Director, yes?
Yeah, just in response to the data center question and some of the information that PG&E has been putting out there publicly about a potential for them to decrease their rates going forward because of these data centers. And it is in fact true, right? And I think the idea there is that they have a huge projection for data center load coming into PG&E's service territory, some of it coming into the city of San Jose and throughout many of the CCA's service territories. The intention there is even if they just serve the distribution and transmission and not the generation component, the idea is that they'll be increasing their denominator significantly, because these are big increases, and none of the utilities in California have seen this type of load growth over the last few years. So as they increase their load, they increase the denominator, the cost will come down, and all of the ratepayers will benefit from that. And so we're very much looking forward to that happening on behalf of our customers, and for us also to be there to serve their load, their clean part of the power supply as well. So we're hopeful, and I think that we're following the stuff that's happening with data centers and PG&E on this effort.
Right, Director Walia?
Thank you so much, Chair Tyson and Mayor Klein. I think we are really aligned today. You were talking earlier. My questions are pretty much the same. So thank you for some of the responses. I was looking at it from a slightly different angle, so you don't have to repeat what you've already shared. My first comment is actually thanking the Finance Committee for the request for that postcard. That's very valuable. We do need to inform every single customer of ours what we are trying to do consistently, and I completely agree that the message would have been buried in the middle of a bill. All residents are seeing is a bill which is increasing. So appreciate that, Finance Committee as well as staff. Then I'm going to start with the reserves part. I have two questions. One is on the reserves. So Amrit really love the umbrella. Needed, whether it's sunshine or rain. So we all need the umbrella. And I will make the same comment that you said. There has been concern expressed by numerous people about the large amount of reserves that SVCE holds on to, being a government agency, or we've had this conversation numerous times, and I've had to defend that, and you've had to defend that, Monica and Girish. So I just want to say that for the public, these are the times why we need the high level of reserves. My one question only in that space is, yes, it's a huge shock, losing 40 million from our reserves. Did you or the Finance Committee consider reducing the discount to 1% starting earlier rather than January of 26? Because I heard you say we will continue the 4% discount to customers through end of December. And what would be that delta if we were to reduce from 4 to 1? And is it worth it? And did you consider? And then I have a separate question.
I don't know if I have the exact, I should probably, let me see my notes. I do have some numbers, but unfortunately I don't have the October to December. Let me tell you that number is very small. And it is not worth introducing a new rate change in the middle of the year. That is, when we had the thorough discussion for this year's budget when we approved the mid-year budget, right? And we've been timing our rate changes to go in effect with the PG&E rate changes in January. This will be very confusing messaging right now from marketing perspective and everything. It fundamentally is a very different way we would be doing the business right now if we introduce a change now, which would be put us very much higher than PG&E rates, right? So we're saying I guess it could still be below PG&E instead of 4%, 1%, but it'd be a new change. We'll be introducing a rate change that we haven't done in the middle of the year. And for the amount, it's very small. It's not going to make any difference.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear. And this is my 5th year on SVCE board, so I understand exactly all the concerns that you're sharing, but it's important for the public to hear that. Yeah. We are thinking about it carefully, not just saying, okay, fine, 40 million taken from reserve, no issues. So we are fully aware of what you're doing. Thank you so much. My other question is talking about the affordability angle for the customers, the PCIA. So let me express it this way. The customer would be, on the face of it, happy with the numbers that we are looking at today, your best estimate, based on what the direction PG&E is going to go. They're going to come down to from about 14 cents to about 10, right? 30%, I saw that. About 30%, let's just say that. That's the number I saw. And so the customer that has been deeply concerned, at least over the last couple of years, about affordability, the customer will be very happy that the rates are going down. And we can see that directly in our reserves coming down, in our revenues coming down, and therefore coming out of reserves. So at that point, I have a couple of questions just on that. How do we share with our customers the longer term concern for us, the organization, if somebody asks us, which often happens in talking to residents? And the second part is, you mentioned T&D and Monica mentioned T&D from a data center, and you were saying that's a separate issue. Is the T&D part expected to go up for the residents, or it's something we would rather not because it's not in our review?
I've heard that PG&E is making claims that would be coming down, right? And I've heard some components of collections that they have in T&D are expiring. So what we're hearing from PG&E is that the number is coming out. Some consultants put out some reports that show in the coming years it'll be coming down. The issue with T&D has been the sharp increase in the last relatively short period of time when they doubled. That number has been going up. But the point I think also that Monica is making is when PG&E's denominator increases, assuming that CPUC doesn't structure special one-offs for these large data centers, if they all bear into the fixed cost, then the per unit cost will go down. So that would help over time. So that should be a very positive impact on T&D rate.
but over time, not in the short run.
Well, it depends on as data centers roll in and the load increases. If the load increases, because so much of the T&D, not everything, but a big component is fixed cost, right? If they can spread that with a bigger denominator, the per unit cost generally would come down.
Thank you. Last question. Talking of fixed cost, how long is this PCIe expected to continue? Because we have been in business for many years now. How long can PG&E keep on saying that they signed these contracts for these customers that they no longer have?
So this is an ongoing issue. We're going to be discussing components of this in the PCIe OIR Track 2 proceeding that's going on. At this point, there is no date. This is a mechanism that has been set up that says my understanding is that these resources were procured, departed customers, including CCAs, on your behalf. The financial obligations go with you. So whether it's positive or negative, we have seen negative PCIAs. So rather than put a date, there is no date, and maybe there would not be date. But this is some of the debatable issues that are out there in that arena. So we will be sharing more information on that. But right now, there is no date that I'm aware of.
Okay. I think about it very simplistically. We just approved a PPA for a 10-year period. That's the duration. SVCE has been in business since 2017. And so how long can the PPAs for PG&E bought for the load of the customers that are now with SVCE continue? That's my question.
Yeah, I think that the way with the PCA works is so long as the resource exists, they're allowed to collect a PCIA on it. And so some of these, unlike us, where we contract for resources through these power purchase agreements, PG&E owns some of these resources. And for a very long time, if you think about hydro facilities for 50 years plus, depending on their licensing, natural gas resources are in the portfolio. Diablo Canyon used to be because of law, it's not PCIA, it's not in the portfolio. So long as they exist, we'll see the value and the costs associated with it.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Great. Director Scozola?
Thank you, Chair Tyson. I really wanted to give my deepest felt thanks and appreciation to you, the team, to the Finance Committee. It's been 3 years for me now, and the first word I learned was volatility in the market, the energy market. And we've seen that, we've all seen that, and I'm sure there's more to come. But the adaptation I've seen here at SVCE constantly, it feels like a daily basis, is pretty mind-blowing to me. And so I'm deeply appreciative of you, the team, and everyone involved in keeping us on the right track, and especially for those deep, deep reserves that I've always said we need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Director Lee?
Thank you very much, Emrit. Great presentation, and I'm still trying to learn. There's just so much about this business, which is certainly very convoluted regarding the PCIe and how especially, for example, when you think about the price of energy, you would think, okay, supply and demand, because the fact that we have more demand for these data center, then you would think that way the price would actually go up. In this case, actually would drive down the delivery part of the costs. Am I right, Monica? Is that how I'm understanding it? So that's interesting. And then I guess the other reason why I guess price is going down, I'm trying to understand is it because the fact that the fossil fuel, the oil prices has been going down apparently last few months? Certainly, is that what also is driving the cost of energy in general?
Yeah, energy is a very complicated market. There's many factors that affect it. One is the global economy, all the uncertainty in the economy. Oil prices definitely affect it. They're very well correlated with natural gas. Natural gas is very well correlated with electricity, as you know. So it all affects. I mean, and some of these are also the policies that are put in place where, we have to build and build to meet the clean targets. So there's a lot of complicated dynamics in this market. It's one of the most volatile commodities. So it's very difficult for anyone to predict is probably, think about predicting price of NVIDIA back in the 90s, energy, I would say, is kind of like that, if not harder. So that's the uncertainty in the forecast that we have. And that's what I said, even PG&E, with all the information they have in forecasting rates, can forecast what their end of the year rate will be.
And as far as the decision-making part, if our assumptions exactly what PG&E decides to price the bill in December, that's when we will actually know what the price is going to be. That's how you came to this $40.1 million deficit on our budget. Based on the fact that we will be still continuing the 4% discount. That's how I should read this big budget?
So we won't know effectively. The final rates of the PG&E rates will come late December. And then by the time we find out, it will be in January. But what happens usually, and if you look at prior budgets, when the key component is the market price benchmarks the CPUC establishes around mid-October, once that number comes out, we can narrow this uncertainty quite a bit. And that's what we will come back and project. Now, if prices can continue to tank down between now and then, and the 40 million will be worse, or it can improve and the 40 million will be less. No one can predict that, what can happen in the market between now and then. And some of that will affect the 2025 rates. As I said, 2025 final rates affect the balancing account. Also, what will happen for 2026 rates, that will be based on what's observed in the market, will basically be used to establish the market price benchmarks. And then there are some regulatory issues around setting market price benchmark for some key components like RA and RPS and GHG attributes.
So the decision-making for this board in terms of setting the pricing of how, let's say, generous we are on this percentage of discount from PG&E, that will be something they will have more information by the time December rolls around for us to, at that point, make that decision, correct?
Absolutely. That's why we will delay that decision then.
Okay. So I guess until then, we really don't know, but this is a good estimate of where we are. I guess the good news for us is if these numbers are looking bad for us, it's good for the ratepayers because that means their rate will be going down, actually.
Yes, the generation component for sure.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much, Henry.
Great, thank you. I'll close with a question or a comment. It's funny because the more we talk about this, the more complicated it gets. And so I'm a little worried about continuing this, but I think we're good so far. But one of the things I'll just echo is our pleasure at building the reserves, even if there's been some question about it, to give us this flexibility. There's a lot of uncertainty. Even now, it's just short term, we're seeing this. One of the things I think about is how do we drive people to electrify their world? And part of that is some of the things we talked about in terms of, say, the big beautiful bill, which takes away all of these incentives for clean energy. Yet at the same time, I understand there's a giant, but that's not the same thing as it's not the same as the bill, but giant natural gas exports to the EU, which could affect the prices there, just in case you thought it was still getting too simple here. But in terms of electrification, the customers are going to see a big reduction in their bill. And our little 1% versus 4% is going to be small change. And I think let's not worry too much about it. In the end, having a lower price is good for encouraging people because I think the cost of natural gas versus electricity is a driver in whether people put in a heat pump. And so this is coming to a question, is what do we know about natural gas prices in the future? And I'm going to give you an out here and say you don't know. But it's that thing. It's that driving force of natural gas versus electricity. I think it's going to drive that electrification. And then the programs that we put in place help encourage that. But the basic economics have to work for people. And we need to consider that. With that, I'm going to give myself the right to say that our discussion is done with this. We appreciate your presentation, and and we'll get some public comment. Thank you, sir.
No hands raised for this item, sir.
So now we'll thank you. and we'll move on to our next topic. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month. And so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to item number 7, which is the strategic focus areas.
I thought we were on the last item. I forgot about my own item. Okay, I will make this very brief. So every year, along with the budget process, we go through a strategic planning process. And if you recall, we were just here not too long ago talking about this. And in fact, we went to the executive committee also in June and kind of started the process here. So we can go to the next slide. So just today, we're just going to review at a very high level the process, the strategic plan that the board approved last fiscal year, including the priorities, which we call strategic focus areas. We'll hopefully get some feedback on those strategic focus areas, that is the priorities, and whether or not we should pivot from them or change them, including an opportunity to relook at our mission statement and see if that's still a valid mission statement, and if the board wants us to also reconsider pivoting on that. Next slide. So every year, again, we go through this process, and it starts really with kind of doing an assessment of our situation, what's going on in our environment. Omrit does the big stress tests, but in addition to that, we also look at just some of the macro drivers and some of the things that really make it a little more challenging for us to meet our mission and our goals, and then what kind of opportunities do we see out there to enhance our ability to meet our mission. Next slide. This is just a timeline. We can skip through that. We have right now 5 strategic focus areas. We have 10 goals that the board has approved, and then we have several measures that support the goals. And those last year, we decided not to have the board approve, but rather have them just be at the staff level. We, the staff and the executive committee, are not recommending that we change the mission at this point. We can go to the next slide. And so we're really just going to focus on the strategic focus areas today. And this is the process that we go through internally, again, doing the scheme of what opportunities, threats exist, and whether or not we need to pivot. Next slide. This has been, not because I've been CEO for a year, but it seems like there's been a lot of things that have happened in the world, and close to home as well. So it's been a year of a lot of changes for us, a lot of changes that directly get to our mission, including executive orders, the big beautiful bill, the new tariffs, new legislations, not just at the federal level, but at the state level, a lot of regulatory change, PCIA being one of them. We saw some changes there that weren't favorable to the CCAs. And so, these things affect our bottom line, but also have to force us to rethink about how we do business as well. There's a looming state budget deficit, which is important too, because when the state can't meet their budget, then other programs get cut, things that affect our customers as well. And then a kind of a new uncertainty that we're also just trying to grapple with, like what does it mean for us, for SVCE, is this projection for huge load growth. SVCE has been in existence now for almost 10 years. And consistently, we've seen flat load, maybe slight increases of 1% year over year. Current projections that the state is showing for us shows us growing to 40% in the next 10 to 15 years. So that creates opportunities, obviously. We also like large load, but unlike serving distribution, we don't have a lot of fixed costs. We have a lot of variable costs. So increasing our denominator doesn't necessarily mean positive things for us. Next slide. So this is just a summary of some of those challenges and threats and opportunities and strengths. Again, we shared this with the executive committee back in June. Nothing that you haven't already heard. The one that I want to kind of highlight here, in addition to what we just talked about in terms of the macro events, is that the executive committee did want us to highlight that we do have a very engaged, smart, and productive staff. And so I want to reiterate that. And as Gia talked about earlier, we've been able to retain everybody for the most part. We do have one employee, very critical employee, who is retiring, but still the staff engaged and committed to our mission. And even though we've taken a bunch of punches in terms of helping us meet our mission, we're still very, very committed, more so now than ever, to helping decarbonize our communities. Next slide. These are the strategic focus areas. I'm not going to read them to you, but essentially they focus on affordability, expanding our clean and reliable grid actions, expanding our offerings to our key customers or C&I commercial industrial customers, preparing for electrification in the region at scale, and these were tied directly to the Bay Area Air District related to appliances, and then of course attracting and retaining employees so that we could do all this work. Next slide. This is a staff's kind of scorecard on how we've done so far in meeting these priorities set by the board. Red doesn't mean bad. It just means that we still have a lot of work to do in this area, and a lot of it is outside of our control. And part of it is just education, quite frankly, and advocating where we can advocate. Yellow is that we see that we've made some progress, but we continue to work quite a bit on this effort. And then green is where we think that we've made some significant progress. And for the green ones here, I'll just note that on strategic focus area 2, one of the big things that we achieved this year was having the board reestablish that 100% clean is in fact our target on an annual basis. And even though we had a difficult time meeting that in 2024, we are very much on track to meet it in 2025 and going forward. And then, as I mentioned, we are doing a great job in terms of attracting, retaining, and building the culture at SVCE. Next slide. So we took this to the executive committee. Their general comment was that they felt that all of these strategic focus areas or priorities are still really relevant and important. They did want us to acknowledge that given some of the challenges or opportunities that we see and some perhaps the big structural changes we might see in our business model going forward, what Amr has talked about, how do we deal with that? And so while these are things that we've faced since day one, they're very, to some extent, operational, but also very strategic. We are not suggesting that we create a priority around that, but we will work on it. And the efforts that staff has been working is doing an internal discussion on the different levers that we have, that the board has discretion over, and how those different levers, adjusting them, whether it's a discount, our reserve policy, our clean targets, our product offerings, how it impacts our bottom line and sustainability over time. And so we will be bringing that discussion back to the board at some time next year for your input as well. And then there was also a suggestion that given the fact that our priorities don't really change year to year, we perhaps look at making the strategic planning process a 2-year process as opposed to annual, which we support, by the way. Next slide. Here, I'm not going to read these, but we are suggesting making slight modifications to the strategic focus areas. That doesn't change the purpose or the intent. It just clarifies some things, and to the extent that we've already achieved something, it essentially recognizes that. Next slide. The same thing here, just some minor cleanups. And the goals that you all approved, the 10 goals, we're not suggesting any changes there. So with that, I'm happy to take any feedback or questions.
Great. Do we have any questions? I don't see any. Or any feedback? Director Rennie, please.
It's probably evident, but I want to double check. So in our strategic focus area 1, you had it read as like we haven't done anything. And a lot of what we have down to do may not have any effect on it. And so I'm just trying to understand, are you grading it a red because no effects have occurred, or you haven't actually done any of these rate education or legislative accurate and regulatory advocacy kinds of things yet?
Right. That's a good point. A very good point. We actually have, in fact, done quite a bit, including holding several workshops, or at least a couple of workshops with the board to enhance the communication or education around affordability and what we can and cannot do. We've also started, along with other CCAs through CalCCA, participating in regulatory proceedings around rates. We certainly, through legislative efforts, have advocated for bills that improve affordability. So we have done quite a bit. I guess it's more a report on whether or not we've been able to move the needle. And I think it's just more of a long-term, we're looking at the full rate, not just our component too, by the way.
So that's
Affordability.
good.
Yeah.
I looked at that, I said, really what we want to do is just try to keep it top of mind because it's a really tough needle to move. And we have done things, so I'm not sure I would grade it as red.
Okay.
You know, because the expectation is I don't know that you're going to move it much, but what we want to do is keep it in everybody's mind, remind. So even if they don't do things that are better, they keep in mind and don't do things that are worse, either regulatory or legislatively. So I'm not sure I'd grade us as red on this.
Okay.
Other feedback? Director Lee.
Yeah, two questions. First is the suggestion of doing every 2 years instead of every year, I think makes sense because usually things don't change that quickly and you spend a lot of time to put that together. And you can always have, something really change greatly, then you should come see us. We can talk about it, but I think every 2 years does make sense. Second is regarding the industrial and commercial side, majority of our customers are residential. No.
No.
So right now, so I'm trying to understand the breakdown there. And in terms of the margin wise, I guess I'm thinking about the number of actual customers, like individually counting, residential is higher. But in terms of the amount of energy that's being sold,
yes,
the aggregate of it, commercial industrial is higher than the aggregate of the residential.
You're exactly right. We have more residential accounts than we have non-residential accounts, but our non-residential customers make up 70% of our sales. So it's a significant amount, and our, all of our customers care about affordability. But for some of our largest customers, their cost of power really impacts their bottom line, and so they care a lot about the cost of electricity.
Who are main competitors in that field?
Our main competitors would be PG&E. They can always decide to go to PG&E. They can opt out of our program at any time and go back to PG&E. There's also direct access. Direct access is capped at this point. So the customers can't decide to go find an alternative provider through direct access. And then, of course, they can always just bypass us by building their own resources like solar storage resources.
Right. Okay. That's all. Thank you very much.
I'll go, and then Director Showalter. I just wanted to reply to Director Rennie, because when I read the slide, which I was copying off of yours, Director Walia, the red was described as more needs to be done, even though it's active. And so I was actually okay with red, because if I were to say, how are we doing? And if in terms of affordability, I'd say our affordability isn't very good, and for good reasons. And so I think it's okay to give ourselves a little red here, and as a reminder of that. So Director Showalter.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up something sort of outside of even a higher level than our strategic focus areas. And that's that, it used to be that we always looked at government as stable. And that's sort of that construct isn't so valid any longer. But we are stable. Silicon Valley Clean Energy is stable. In the 10 years we've been in business, we have created a very stable business and government and agency that you can count on. We bought a building. We've got great staff. So I just, that's not part of our strategic focus in the sense that we kind of took it for granted. But I just want to bring it up because in the big discussion that we're having in our nation now, stability in government isn't a given. But we are stable. So I'm not sure how we fold this in, but I think it's really important that as we move forward, we distinguish what we accomplish and the stability of it, so people get that we're doing the job. Because I think there's just an awful lot of conflagration of what, people think of government as a single thing. And it's not. We all know that it's, thousands of agencies working together. And we're one of them, but we're a real stable one. So that's what I wanted to bring up is that I think that, how we fit in with providing stability for our community for power is, it's a really big deal.
Yeah, that's an important point. And there are entities out there that make that assessment objectively. They're called credit raters, and we have achieved both from Moody's and Standard & Poor's investment grade credit ratings. In fact, this year we were upgraded. And so, yes, you're right. They make that assessment on whether we are stable and have done so.
Director Rennie?
If I could just drill down a little bit more on the affordability, because I think when we made that, I was thinking in terms of things like there's regulatory changes. Let's say the amount of RA they make everybody do, that adds a lot of cost, right? There can be an excessive amount of RA in response to a year where we had rolling brownouts or something like that. Sure. And then the next year we've got it, they make us buy excessive amounts of RA that drive up the cost. So we should be measuring in, success in this on, was something proposed and we successfully got them to not overdo it, for example, or we lost, okay, maybe keep that as a grade, we lost this argument, cost was added here in the system. And there's, several places this could occur. And that's what I think about here. It's stopping those kinds of, that's where we have some influence. The big things reducing costs might be, well, let's just give up on clean energy and go back to, cheap natural gas or something like that. Well, of course we can reduce costs, but that we know that's not a direction it wants to occur, but there's a lot of ways where it can be more expensive. So I'm suggesting maybe over the year we keep track of these kinds of things. So if we come back and grade ourselves, we have, because this is a more difficult one to grade, we think through where we've won and lost in these kinds of things.
That's a very good point. I think we should put some of that in.
Director Martinez Beltran and then Director Meadows.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to second my colleague talking about the 2-year budgeting, and I think that's a really great idea. We use that. I think it can help staff and provide a little bit more flexibility in how you're organizing things, as long as with the caveat that there really is in that second year the opportunity to make change and to flux. But I think that would be a great thing for us to look at as well.
For the strategic planning process, not budgeting.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, the strategic planning process. Because I think it gives us a chance to have some, continuity, but then we also have the opportunity. We're not doing this every single year. It's a big lift.
Director Meadows.
Thank you. So we're kind of diving a little deep in this, but so I'm going to jump in the puddle with everybody else. Looking at the SFAs and the rating, which Director Rennie has talked about as others, it's kind of odd because usually we'll talk about how we rate that we've done. And here we're actually looking at how we say we're going to rate in 2025, 26, if I'm reading this correctly. And yet those are really different scales. So for example, if you look at SFA2, expand clean and reliable grid actions, we're coming off a difficult year. We didn't achieve that target, as you mentioned, and we've revised our hurdles or our thinking around the hurdles. But we're evaluating that as green ahead of time because the ability to put those purchase agreements in place allows us to have confidence in that. But some of these other areas, if we look back at them a year from now and assess where we came out, we can't really predict them as well now. So it's a little weird to look at strategic focus areas now and predict where we think that we're going to be a year from now. Or am I the only one struggling with this? But especially on SFA2, where we were really across the barrel with that. And now we're saying, no problem, for this next coming year, which I understand why. It's
Right.
based on agreements, but some of the rest of the stuff doesn't have that same benefit, if you want to
Right.
call it that.
Right. Yeah. And the intent was not to project how we might be in a future date, but rather at this point in time, when we're looking at these, are we qualitatively assessing ourselves as far as meeting this priority? I think what I'm hearing though is perhaps we need to add a little more definition about what success, progress, or failure looks like around these priorities, because we didn't do that when we set them out. And so I think we can do that as a refinement to the strategic planning process.
Right, and I forget we always have this weird year, but we're still in 20,
Yeah.
you know, so SFA 2 could well be green looking forward, but I'm not sure we'd say it's green now. So that's, you know,
Point well taken.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, I'm going to say thank you for that presentation. Let's see if we have any public comment on it. I don't see any in the room
None online.
or there. So thank you. So I hope that feedback was useful to you. And with that, we'll move on to item number 8. And we will, our very own Zoe Elizabeth, Director of Decarbonization Policy and Community Strategies, has the floor.
Got it. All right. Perfect. All right, I get to be the closer after I know it's been a long evening, but this item is really important. I'm going to start by saying congratulations to Sunnyvale for actually getting the first REACH code of the 2025 REACH code season over the first reading last night at 10:30 p.m. in these very chambers. Okay. Yes. Does that work? Okay. All right. So you all know we're here to provide an update. This is, we know we've been doing this every other month, but we're really entering kind of the fast track season. So I'm going to go quickly through this presentation in case folks have any clarifying questions, since there's been so much activity in the past couple months and coming up. But we always just start with this celebration slide to remind us, really, despite all of the challenges, how much the work that you have done so far has really moved the market. Okay. So first, I think folks are aware of this, but it's been a really fast-moving, Benna spoke a little bit earlier, time. So the state passed this bill, AB 130, that limits the ability of local jurisdictions to adopt REACH codes. It actually pauses any new state codes for 6 years. But there are some exceptions. One, it only impacts residential codes, so commercial codes can continue to go forward. And then second, there's this kind of carve out for jurisdictions where electrification codes are linked to their general plan goals or requirements, as long as that general plan was adopted before June 10th of this year. I'm not going to kind of get into all of the nuance on that exemption because it's a little bit confusing, but I will say that we actually have a special counsel on board that wrote a memo that's been provided to all of your councils to kind of review and understand if your general plan would allow for this exemption or to kind of have that discussion. So this is really just the chart we've been working really for the last year or so on developing this kind of pyramid of codes to work with all of our jurisdictions on. Before AB 130 was passed, we had these individualized action plans of what folks wanted to adopt. And then when the rule went into place, we consulted with staff from each of your jurisdictions and kind of laid out the options, saying, okay, if you would like to move forward before the date set, here's what would need to happen. If your council thinks that you qualify for this exemption, you can kind of move forward after that date. So we kind of modified those plans. I think somebody was talking about volatility and flexibility. I want to really applaud all of the staff, your agencies. That's not easy to do, particularly when folks are so understaffed, but everybody has really kind of stepped up and looked and see what made the most sense for each of your jurisdictions. So this is the overall snapshot of where
folks stand today. We just updated it yesterday morning because dates are changing kind of all the time. But we have 2 agencies that are working to adopt before that October 1st deadline, Mountain View and Sunnyvale. As I mentioned, Sunnyvale had their first reading yesterday. And then we have 4 that have kind of planned and are actively working to adopt before December 1st. Some of those council dates are already on the books. I think some are still forthcoming. And then 5 that are evaluating. I think I'll just, well, this is really the kind of summary slide, which is that, again, we're communicating with all of your 13 jurisdictions. We're also available for one-on-ones with you or any of your council members. We put together a short information packet kind of ahead of when anybody goes to vote, so you have all the FAQs, but we can always meet with you directly too to kind of go over the details of these codes or answer any other questions that you have. We have technical resources from TRC, as well as special counsel resources that I mentioned. Okay, I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions.
All right, a lot of progress. Any comments or questions from the board? The Vice Chair Klein.
I just want to say thank you for staff for being here last night. I do think that helped, you know. I do think that a packet of information of the programs SVCE provides and all that, whether or not that's, you know, making it available to staff from each of the cities, to make it available to them to put as part of a presentation. Our presentation was pretty dry last night and lots of questions to staff that SVCE, when they spoke under public comment, I think had a lot of value, as well as, you know, explaining some of the things that this organization does that, you know, that a lot of council members don't know everything. And it's also dispelling some of the rules or some of the misinformation that's out there. We had a very strong set of emails coming in late, mainly from renters and certain single-family neighborhoods, saying how this will, you know, a lot of hypotheticals that were invalid or incorrect. And so I think maybe putting an FAQ together to not just say, here's all the good things that this organization is doing to decarbonize, to help, you know, the emergency water heater program, those sorts of things, as well as kind of the model codes that you're putting out there. Oh, if you're replacing the compressor in your air conditioner, that's not going to cause you to immediately throw it away and put in a heat pump. And that was some of the misinformation that we received, that it's like, oh, this is going to add thousands of dollars to a minor repair, and I can't have my AC. I can't have my AC in the meantime. So I think those things would help staff, you know, city staffs as well as councils when they're trying to move these green codes forward. So thank you for you and your staff of what you were able to do.
Great, fantastic, and thank you for that input.
Great. Director Walia?
Thank you so much, Mayor Klein, about that. I am not familiar with that, but whatever I heard from him is fabulous suggestion. I would certainly recommend that for my city, and I'm sure for the others. I am assuming some SVCE staff member would be present at those city council meetings.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Do we have any, Director Showalter?
Now, this is actually a comment that's sort of cross with my service on the Bay Conservation and Development Commission. We got a legislative update last Thursday as well, and I was surprised that the issue of SB 130 came up. And in that context, it was about including requirements for ground floor elevations to be high enough to be above flood levels. And to make sure that that is a policy that's in your building code. And so I just mentioned that as another thing while we're going through this, if it can be included. Some of us already have it, but some of us don't. But it is important for sea level rise protection. This is just another way that as a civil engineer, I have to say that building codes are extremely powerful. And in civil engineering, you never want to let a disaster go to waste. And you laugh, and it is sort of funny, but the truth is there are civil engineers working in academic departments and consulting firms all over the country on sort of esoteric things or things that are difficult to get the word out about. And then there's some disaster that happens, and the newspaper comes out and says, well, how could you solve this? And some professor steps forth and says, you could do X, or you could do Y, and we've been working on this. And that's when you get these abilities to increase the code. And we just don't know what disasters there's going to be in a time period. So I just, this freeze is very concerning.
Yes, yes.
But thank you so much for making it so that we're making the best of it. And that's exactly what we should be doing. So I know I've been talking to my staff at Mountain View, and they are working very diligently on this, and they've gotten a lot of help. So we really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
With that, I'll turn and see if we have any public comment. I do not see any in the room. And with that, thank you, Zoe.
Right, thank you.
And I appreciate that. Let's move on to board member announcements and direction on future agenda items. Do we have any? Go ahead, Director Lee.
Yes, I came in late because I was driving all the way back from St. Louis Obispo, spent a day actually with PG&E visiting their the Diablo Canyon plant. Very, very educational to see how that operates. And speaking of disaster, we went through the whole thing of how after Fukushima incident, what has been implemented at Diablo Canyon from the lessons learned, all the double, triple, quadruple backup that they have put in to make sure that if there were earthquake, there's going to be a tsunami, then what? Right, so all these things have been worked on to make sure that the Canyon is as safe as it could be. So I thought that was very interesting, and understanding the extension of the 5 years and how that extension is only till 29 to 30. So this issue will have to be addressed by the state again, and the fact that that one site, Diablo Canyon, supply close to 10% of the electricity of the entire state of California. So it's a really big deal. So I learned a lot, and one of the invitations they said is something for the SVCE board to in the future to probably schedule a date to go down to take that. I think it would be phenomenal. Yeah, so throw that to board and Monica to arrange. I've got all the people you need to talk to make that happen. Thank you.
Yeah, we're trying. We decided to do it through CalCCA, and so I think they're lagging. So we can just do it on our own if they don't come up with a date. Okay.
Oh, great. Thanks for that comment. I don't see any others. So before we adjourn, I just want to say thanks for the very informative. It's 9:09, but we had a great discussion. I'm very proud of this board and the effort you're putting into what is a very complex operation. And with that, we call ourselves adjourned.